So today we want to talk about brands that stick. Do people actually care about brands? Do you care about brands?
If I've had wonderful experiences at a certain property and it's that one brand, and I don't know the destination that I'm going to that well, then I'm going to rely on my previous experiences and go ahead and make that choice.
A guarantee, a promise, or at least a lower risk of something happening, something bad happening, that risk is mitigated.
I think marketing people care about brands a lot more than their customers really care about the brands.
So that's a good point though, right? And I think you've raised something interesting. Yes, it is a promise of a certain level of something, experience or whatever else. But the expression of yourself, where it actually starts to tie in your own who you are.
I find that the brand connection is really strong when there's an irrational loyalty, so that you choose a hotel brand because you're so loyal to the brand that you book it because of the loyalty reward points. It could be because of the service experience, because the brand speaks to you in a way, or you could get simply your free night because of another brand association like your Amex card. But for all of us in the room, when you have so much choice, this market has so much noise. And so why do you choose a hotel room that could be 2,000 baht a night or 20,000 baht a night if you had no budget? And I think that's where we're sort of working with as brands, is how to remove the background noise on why we are trying to connect with the customer and how that customer wants to then stay with us and we attract it. I mean, that's probably the most challenging, I think, in this market we have right now, is how we differentiate as brands and how we attract the right audience without worrying about all the background noise.
I would just like to add emotional attachment to that one as well, which I think is extremely important, because what a brand stands for and what it believes in, usually those sort of underlie with what you believe in. So I think the original question to our guests, why do our guests choose our brand?
It's an expression of who you want to be. It's an aspirational thing oftentimes, or a confirmation as well. I mean, that's a large part of it. People, associate themselves with a brand. They want other people to view that. Oftentimes, it's part of aligning, to have less internal conflict. These are my principles. This is who I think I am, and this is a brand that represents me, whether it be a handbag brand or whether it be a hotel brand.
And the story behind that company as well. So again, coming back to those values and what it stands for. So whether it is in the luxury goods segment, I do think that the stories behind them are important. They've been curated for people to understand the process.
How do you build a unique brand?
A brand has to be very true to what it is wanting to deliver, because otherwise there can be an absolute disconnect between what marketing is selling and then what actually is being delivered. And so if we look at purely the hotel space, I find that the brand commitment to the customer is the number one, the core value of that, because you just have to be true. And so what I find in this market, I'm just going to keep it to this market, is that everyone uses a lot of sameness in the way that they communicate who they are. There are a lot of, we're this great location, we're this fabulous position, we have this great restaurant, but they haven't gone deeper. And when you can find deeper connections with what you're trying to sell, you're able to create an emotional attachment with the customer to then drive that loyalty. And I think everyone needs to go back to what they're selling and their brand and their product and go, what are we? And don't try and be anything else but that. And so if I keep it simple, I don't confuse the message. And then that way the customer is connected to what we're selling and they don't feel like they're being sold something that is not correct.
So again, to recap, the question was how do you differentiate?
Yeah.
And that's a good question, because I think that the business model of hotels, in my opinion, has shifted with this giant amalgamation of all these companies out there that I think has really turned hotel work in a lot of ways into a commodity. I think that probably many people here would agree that there's a lot of hotels in this city, if you just take one sign off and put another sign off, no one would have any clue. And so a lot of what has started to be pushed from some of the bigger companies, which is a fine model, is this economies of scale where they're able to drive things. People are staying there not because of anything other than maybe some very specific points, like the location, for instance. If it's a great location, you need to be working across the street. You don't want to be 2 hours in Bangkok traffic. You're going to stay there. So convenience, things like that. But I think the key point is not losing sight of the essence of the brand, which is also something else that can really drive the business. And so to become different, obviously you have to act different. You have to be catering to a different type of customer. And I think that's the key is as the customer continues to evolve, it's about a product for a specific type of customer. If you're trying to be everything to everybody, it's not going to work and your brand is not going to have any substance. At a time when people didn't know what lifestyle was, they thought that better meant bigger, meant more expensive. And it's only been in recent years, actually, in other parts of the world that people have started to realize better is not bigger, better is not more expensive, better is what fits me better. And maybe that is gold faucets in the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, or maybe that's, you know, a million count, thread count blanket in the Rosewood, or maybe it's I want to sleep in a teepee in the middle of the desert. But I mean, that is how I think that in terms of differentiation, it's understanding that market.
One point I would add to that is the staff. Because without the staff believing in that brand and really being invested in that culture, it's not going to, it'll be artificial. And
Even if your hotel is offering the same as everyone, more or less the same as everyone else, if you work on your brand and make it distinctive in all those ways and how you communicate, then that's a big strength in your marketing.
The next question is, how do you successfully enter a new market where you have low brand recognition?
we have to look at the values of the company and how that feels here in Southeast Asia. That is really the key, because it's not a one-hat-fits-all. It is difficult. It's a very cliquey market, so it's very difficult to say, hey, we're new, we're here. Even harder with a new guy who's been here for like 7 weeks, so that makes it difficult as well. But we are all, I don't want to use the word authentic all the time, but I think by bringing those experiences and those values from Bill Kimpton, I think bringing that here, we've been able to really tell those stories with the Thai style, which I think is great. So,
especially the hoteliers in the room, we're all responsible for driving the destination, we're all responsible for driving the city, and I think we can all complement each other, and there's enough business for all of us.
If you're a brand that is already unique, that is different, there should be demand in the market you're entering. It shouldn't have to be a bloodbath trying to compete and steal business from other people. Having the right people that want to be with you, that choose to support you, these people who are addicted to the brand, they will also follow you wherever you go. And I think that's key. So you take your international market, the people that love you, that will travel anywhere, and you make sure that you're very locally and culturally relevant, and those two things will come together to drive the business. Brand managers often end up being brand police. It's like someone has written some book, and then you have to follow it, and this is supposed to mean that that's your brand. I think that there's a very fine line between having brand managers police hotels versus letting the authenticity of this, choosing the right staff, the right people, the right culture, letting the authenticity of them actually be what leads and drives the brand. So I think it is important to have a brand manager in some regards, but you've got to be super careful that they don't turn into brand police that actually curtail the creativity and actually stop the authenticity. As soon as you have to tell somebody that's not on brand, do it differently, you're already dead. Yeah. Is it that you should have hired the person that's going to do it the right way in the first place? The ROI has to work, and the best way to make that work is, again, actually relying on the brand, and it's where it does make a big difference. Otherwise, you're relying on the product. And if I have to build a more expensive room to sell at a higher rate, then eventually you're going to value engineer all of the value out of your product. You need to be able to build a product at a certain level, at a certain price point, but be able to charge more for that product. In luxury, you're competing based on how many people you have, what is your staff to room ratio, how big is your room, how expensive is your room. You give me $1 million room and I'll give you a $400 ADR. So the issue is, how can I build a $300,000 room for a $300 ADR? That'd be a good deal. But, and that is where brand drives it, because people are coming to your resort, coming to your hotel, not because it's the biggest room, not because you've spent the most money on it, but because there is something. You are getting a brand premium. The brand is driving an incremental rate. Then your ROI is better, and then you're a happy owner, we're a happy operator, and long live happily ever after.